Here we go with part 5 of why your AI implementation is going to fail. Now, here's a key. Stay for this because you're going to find out why this is a good thing. Hey, welcome to Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf. Thanks for being part of the conversation. And part 5 of why your AI implementation, your AI utilization is probably going to fail. And on this step, this part, here's the key. When it does fail, it's gonna be a glorious day. You're gonna be happy. You're gonna be popping champagne if you do this. And it really comes down to how you're framing what you wanna get out of the AI utilization that you are embarking on. What are the results? What are the goals? How did you lay that out? What was the project plan along the way? How did you train and coach your people? Right? Ties back into the why are you doing this in the first place? Let me use an example. For my book, Performer Perish 30-Day Race to Save a Company, we talk about in the financials chapter and in the behind the scenes chapter, BTS, about how we failed to hit our goals. The goals that I had stated to the executive team and go, here's what we can achieve. We did not achieve those goals. We didn't hit those numbers. Still, the executive team, the key executive, C-suite looked at me and said, you can fail like that anytime. And they were smiling and toasting coffee. It was a company facility. I remember popping any champagne. They were very, very happy. And here's why. Here's why. In 2 weeks, we demonstrated a 40% productivity improvement on their largest, highest volume production line. So imagine that 40% productivity improvement. That's a massive cut in what it costs in their per unit manufacturing cost for the product. And they had multiple products going across that production line. Also, we hit 50% on work in process. So that means we've got less stuff that is no longer scrap. See, one of the things in manufacturing, take a roll of aluminum. See those things, big rolls of aluminum and steel you see on semi trucks. They're so heavy that you can only put one or two on an entire semi flatbed, and you have to put them right over the axles so that it doesn't break the chassis on the semi. Once you start cutting that metal, it is only worth the scrap value of the metal. While it's still in a roll, you can resell it on the spot market for whatever the going rate is for unused quality aluminum, quality steel. Once it's a completed product, you can sell it to a customer for the value of the product that you have contracted with them to sell. Anything in between there is just worth scrap. So it's worth pennies, if you're lucky, pennies on the dollar. So to reduce by 50% the work in process, the material that is scrap, in that scrap phase between raw material and finished goods, is a big win. And we did that in 2 weeks. Now, here's the key. I knew from having studied their manufacturing processes that we could get at least 50%, perhaps even 60% productivity improvement, but for certain 50%. We got 40% in 2 weeks. Part of the win on that was the team that was running that manufacturing line, they're the ones that created the system. See, we already knew what the future would look like. So what do we do? Instead of going, here, step back, we're going to change this. Now we'll teach you how to run it. I taught them how to do what I did, how to redesign their own manufacturing line. And if you think that's not possible, it was totally possible. We achieved that. They got 40% productivity improvement. They owned that process. It was their process. They designed the manufacturing line. They were so proud of that. And they worked hard. They were working 12, 14-hour days for 2 weeks to get it done. Now, could have pushed another 10%, got them into 50%. What happens when we do that? See, that would have been very short-sighted. I could have maxed out my goals and looked really good and said, here we go. We got 50%. And that would have lasted maybe a month. Certainly no more than 3 months, one quarter, one business quarter. And it would have fallen apart. They would have gone back to what they did before. Why? because they were forced to do something they didn't own. Now, why? So, as far as that still being wins, they're going, and from a management standpoint, from a business owner standpoint, you want that extra 10%, right? Here's the beautiful secret behind that. They owned the 40% that they got. Now they knew how to keep improving it. So they'll get that extra 10% and way more over the coming year, 2 years. And they won't have a hostile relationship with management and ownership because it's their process. They created it. They know now how to incrementally find ways to go, hey, this works better. Good. We'll make this standard operating procedure incorporated into what we do, make a change. They now know how to do that. Management, the executive team also knew what their operating range was. That leap of 40% was still good enough that they were willing to call it a win. They knew what their win range was. We're going, look, here's what we know the max is that we can possibly do. So that would have been the stretch goal in that case. They knew that at 40%, it was still a massive win. And it meant that it was a smart decision to not close the company, to reverse the decision to close the company, which they did. They reversed that decision and then implemented the rest of the plan that we had created following the same process. We trained the people that did the work on how to redesign their work process. We didn't teach them technology. There's some other things that go into that. It was training them on what they needed to know in order to redesign the process and provided them the support to get it implemented. Now it was their process. We trained management how to coach them through that. So now they're able to go next process, next area. Let's do manufacturing. Okay, let's go to receiving. Let's go out to, so every major department in the company they went through after that, because now the people running the processes, the people actually doing the work were the ones that were designing the work. And you couldn't get wild horses to drag them away. So it was a huge win. And we stuck to the mission, right? So here's the key: stay focused on your why. In part 4, we talked about 6 steps. And the 0 step was you got to have a clear why. Used to be taught by academia as, you have to create a crisis in order to drive a change. That doesn't work. Practitioners have known for a long time that doesn't work. That doesn't work. You can't live in a constant state of crisis. You can't run your company in a constant state of crisis. Your team cannot perform at high levels in a constant state of crisis. So that's just ridiculous. What they have since updated 20 years later, they've caught up with the rest of us, that it is a strong why. And Simon Sinek really got that ball rolling when he did his TED talk that has become so famous about you have to start with why. And it's true for so many things. You have to start with a strong why and a clear definition of what that looks like so that you know what is your minimum acceptable, what is your actual goal, and then what is your stretch goal. Right? And your goal should be way above your minimum. So that if you fail, you still win. See, that's a leadership principle. So if you're leading effectively, even when you fail, you're still going to have a massive win because you did all the other stuff right. You just didn't get as far to your stretch goal as you might have. And for good reasons, because it's much better to have a massive win today, have that stick, than it is to get that last 5 cents out of it and have everybody hate you. People will be leaving. Your turnover goes up. The changes that you made will not last. I guarantee you they will not last. I've seen it time and time again in multiple industries because everybody's burnt out. They don't like it. They don't own it. It's like, so what? They don't have information that they need that bakes resentment and anger and reinforces that confrontational boss subordinate kind of BS into the relationships and communication, as opposed to teaching them how to get where you need them to go, coaching them through that so that they own it, and then continuing to coach them to constantly improve over time, right? So that you ultimately, as Bill Gates famously said about the internet, started out slower than anybody thought. It ended up being way bigger than anybody ever could have dreamed of. That's the results that you'll get. You get just a little bit slower on the front end. You still get what you need to have a successful start, and that's really all the implementation is just a start. Then over time, you'll get to a point where you'll go, you know what, we never could have imagined we would have gotten here because you put the right process in place. You set the right path for everybody, got that in motion, and led them forward on it. So that's part 5. When you fail, it's still a win if you're doing it right. Thanks for being part of the conversation. I'm Wolf. This is Wolf's Watch. I look forward to seeing you out on the trail.